Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's Courtney, and as the title says, I am bringing you guys my January wrap up for everything that I read this month. This month was a very good reading month for me. I actually got a chance to read 4 books, which is for me an all-time high and personal best. Give myself a pat on the back. I do want to apologize in advance if you guys happen to see any changes in lighting or some lines pop up across my face. It is because I'm sitting in front of my window and the sun is currently setting, and it's just because I had some stuff to do today. Then I want to film. There we go. So if it bothers you guys, I'm sorry, but this is just what your girl is working with. Oh, another thing. If you guys see me wearing the same outfit in the next few videos, it's because I want to record as much as possible and have it up for you guys by this weekend. So let's get started. I'm really excited to get into this. The first book I want to get into is Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. I did discuss this in my winter 2017 book haul, but I'll give another brief synopsis of it. It follows 2 sisters. One is married to a British slave trader and the other is sold into slavery. The story follows both their lineages. One is in America as a slave and it follows her family down from there, and the other is still living in Ghana and it follows her family down from there. I'm so glad I read this book at the beginning of the year because it just really opened my eyes to the art of storytelling. I never read a book with this many different perspectives before, and it really never got confusing or dry. It just kept you engaged. The book actually gives you, hold on, you guys can't see it, but in the beginning of the book it actually gives you a family tree, so that way if you do happen to get lost along the way, I often use that as a reference because I would get confused about the names, like whose granddaughter is this and which side. But the stories were riveting, guys. Let me just tell you, there were a bunch of different stories, but in each and every single one, there were so many emotions that I felt. It went from anger, it went from confusion, it went from heartbreak, it went from, yes, it's romantic. It just was so much, and it just shows you the power of how much things can change within just one generation. And so I think that this going forward is how we can sort of, interpret how things are going on in our society, how the history does impact the future. I know some people's like, you make your own and, things are different in the past, but it really, following this story really just shows you how much, things repeat themselves, or how much a generation is hindered by the things that the previous generation were not allowed to have, or what struggles they went through. What I liked about this book is that it didn't really have any loose ends. It's sort of, where it left off in one story, it would loop back into the next generation, but then would tie you up and, sort of let you know what's going on with the previous generation from that lineage. And that's what I really liked about this book. Shown light to an experience. And one thing that I have to say that this book teaches you is that the Black experience is not just one experience. It comes in a diverse multitude of things and occurrences and situations, and that could just be within one family. So a lot of times, society would like to categorize a group of people as a whole, but every experience is unique and should be valued and should be considered when talking about, a history of a people, or, the culture of a people, or what struggle a people had to go through. And so that's what I appreciate about this book, is that it kept every struggle, every situation, every life unique to its own. There were no loose ends. I felt fulfilled, and I felt that the story concluded itself in a way that had me thinking, this was an amazing book. So 5 out of 5 stars. I think everyone should read it. I know a lot of people had this on their TBR for this year. Go ahead and jump on it. This is not something that you need to put off. The next book that I read was Bone Gap by Laura Ruby. This was, he's got a couple awards here. Prize Awards for Excellence in YA Literature and the National Book Award finalist. This was, as I stated before in my haul, this was like one of the first magical realism books that I have ever read. And it was very interesting. I wasn't sure what to expect. The premise of the story is basically, it follows this young boy named Finn, who basically, he lives in a small town, and this girl in the small town goes missing. And she was basically an outsider. She came to the town, and she goes missing, and Finn is the only one who saw her kidnapper. but no one believes him. It's just him, you know, finding himself and trying to figure out what happened to Rosa and sort of put pieces together, but it leads you down the path of fantasy and sort of like trying to figure out what's real and what's not. You know, it has a little bit of romance in there, but it doesn't overwhelm the book. And that's what I really liked about this story, is that it had a lot of like little hidden meanings to things, and that's what I really liked. What is beauty? You know, what are considered flaws? You know, what makes us a perfect or imperfect person? What divides, you know, what is real from what is true? And it's all based upon one word, and that is your perception. How we perceive things is how we know what is real, what is not, what is beautiful, what is not, what is true, what is not. And so when you have this town full of people with different perspectives, different ways of viewing things or not viewing things, it sort of, you know, has you thinking, you know, how could they not see this? How could this go, you know, slide past? There were some things, I'm not gonna lie, that I guessed sort of, you know, like almost towards the end. I was like, I know this is gonna happen, or yeah, I could sort of tell where this was going based upon how it was leading up to that point. But it didn't, you know, disappoint. It didn't, you know, ruin the story for me. But I think it kept me very much engaged. I read this in like 2 days. It's not, you know, a thick book. So I think if anyone wants to get introduced to magical realism and, you know, just really have a fun story that has a lot of, you know, sort of moral plot, you know, I'm not gonna say moral, but, you know, some like good teachings in it, I think this is a very clever way to do it. Bone Gap is the name of the book, and I would recommend this. I would say I give this a 4 out of 5 stars. I'm not really used to rating books, but if I had to give this one, I would give it a 4 out of 5. The only reason it got a 4 out of 5 is because it did move a little slow for me in some parts, and then there were some parts that I found easy to figure out. So I sort of like to be pushed in books and sort of like to be surprised. So that's the only reason this got a 4. But excellent book. I know a lot of people were reading it this month for Diversathon. I did not participate in Diversathon, but I did already have this book that I received for Christmas, so I wanted to go ahead and read it. It is called The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. Basically, this follows a slave named Cora and her running away from slavery. And it depicts the Underground Railroad as an actual railroad that, you know, picks up slaves from each stop and tries to get them to freedom. This book was effing exhausting. I don't want to give any spoilers. If you want to hear a more thorough, in-depth review, please let me know in the comments down below. There was no break in this story. It was very fast-paced. It jumped from one state to another. It let you know what was going on. At some point, it, you know, slowed down a bit to where you thought, you know, things were going to go good and things are okay. And the next minute, it's just back again, you know, running for freedom. I feel like this is a narrative that needed to be told, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what it was to run away and escape to freedom. It wasn't an all or nothing shot. You go and either you get caught or you don't. And if you don't get caught, then you're totally in the clear. Like, there's so many untold stories that I feel that are like this, to where you get to a place where you think you're safe, but then there's so many other chains that are left to escape when you're a slave, or when you're a person who's been dehumanized, who's been, you know, marginalized. I feel like there's so much more than to the physical. You know, it discusses the mental chains that are there and how you try and break loose. You're just totally, you know, away from just the racist rhetoric that is depicted down south. But there were plenty of people, and, you know, on the Mason-Dixon line and up north, who had the same views and perspectives as those down south, but they did it very covertly, because they don't teach you that in history. They teach you that the South was bad, the North was good, and that's why slaves were freed. And that's not the case. It talked about so many aspects to it. It talked about the mental, the emotional, the fact that, you know, the physical slavery that was, you know, you think about the syphilis experiment. And another thing I like that it went into in this book is it gave every character a duality. We're not all bad and we're not all good. You know, there was some bad characters who are at first introduced, you're like, oh my God, they're horrible. You know, how could they do such a thing? But then Colson Whitehead goes in and he'll pick up a chapter and it sort of focuses on this one person that you didn't really pay attention to before. The whole time you're thinking, I need to pay attention to the main character and the people she's interacting with. And then there's like these secondary characters that are brought in that she just, interacts with briefly. And then all of a sudden you're in a chapter to where it talks about this person, how they got there in their struggle, how did they learn to think this way? What happened in their life to put them on this path to where their lives intersected with Cora's? But this book really did do that for me. And I read this book, Homegoing, and Between the World and Me within a span of a couple weeks. And I would recommend that people do the same, because it just keeps you in this mindset. It keeps you in this world of what it means to have this experience. So if I could give a recommendation on how to read it, even though I didn't do it this way, I would say read Underground Railroad. That will get you into the slave perspective of freedom and running and being free, and the concept of fighting off these chains that they were born into or had forced upon them. Then read Homegoing, where it shows you from the before, and then the during, and then the after, following generations and generations, how being in Africa, then being a slave, can transform into a generation and lineage of people who either don't know where they come from, don't know why they do the things they do, and don't know why the communities are the way they are. And then read Between the World and Me, and you'll see how now in modern times, it still manifests itself. The recurring theme of the black body. The black body will forever be seen as a threat. And this is a theme that I've noticed through all three of these books, where it's like society is preoccupied with eradicating the black body from the world. For whatever reason is there, the black body is what they go after. When you have to think about when the spirit is broken and when the mind is still ensnared in chains from slavery and being dehumanized and being knocked down, it is the body that keeps going. As long as you live, that is an act of defiance in itself. No, I'm rapping and I know I'm preaching, but that's the sort of, wake up call that I had. These are sort of like revelations that came to me as I was reading these books. So I would say definitely a 5 out of 5 stars. I'll probably read this again. I was a little about the ending, but I'm not going to give anything away. I just felt like I just wanted the story to continue, but where it did leave off, I understand. It sort of leaves the rest to your imagination. You already know how this goes. You've seen her struggle enough. So I would say definitely pick up this book. 5 out of 5. Brilliant. The last book that I read, it's very popular. It has a movie adaptation that is currently out. And honestly, I was a little skeptical at first to pick this book up, because I don't like reading a lot of things that already have a bunch of hype attached to it. I know that Underground Railroad and Homegoing definitely have a bunch of hypes, but they were already on my list from jump. So when I picked up this next book, I wasn't sure what to think. I was like, okay, it's probably going to be a sad story, but nothing I haven't read before. So the next book that I have is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This was my last book that I read in January. I just finished this a few days ago. And let me tell you, this book got me. So basically it follows this little boy named Connor. His mom is dying of cancer, and this monster comes from his dreams or what have you, and it sort of helps him gets through what he's going through by telling him stories. And at the end, he has Connor tell him a story about his own self-truth. I was engaged. The pictures in this book are just, they're dark, they're haunting, like, look at that shit. Like, it kept me in. It almost gave me like this nostalgic feeling of reading picture books and sort of being totally put into that world. Like, I got through this book in less than a day. Now, I will say that I was, I would get a little warm and fuzzy on a couple parts. Like, I felt like something was about to happen, but, I was very resistant, like, I'm not gonna cry. This book is sad, but I got this. So it got to the last like 50 pages, and it was just feels all day. It was just like, it was like, all right, on to the next page. 2 pages later, oh my God, like it fills you up with so much emotion, because anyone can experience loss. but to see it in someone so young and to see his, mental struggle with it and trying to reason, and the monster is just pushing him to confront it. And I feel like, coming from a counselor, that's what I try to have my clients do with their personal stuff, is to push them to confront it and to acknowledge their truths. Seeing it done in this way, and it was so artistic, and the words were just, the prose was phenomenal. It just kept going. It was so smooth, and I will give this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I'm not hating. It got me. I cried. I'm gonna go watch the movie on my Fire Stick. Okay, guys, that's it for my wrap up. If you guys would like to see any more in-depth, more in-depth reviews about any of these books, just leave a comment down below. And of course, if you like the video, hit subscribe, because I have more coming your way. And that's all I have. So peace, love, and take care, y'all.